Looks like we have quite a few of you joining us here today. And as always, we start these with beginning in gratitude. And today for me, it's very simple. And by this point, I'm probably sounding like quite the broken record. But this week, Friday, my son Wesley is going to be 8 months old. So officially, I think his first words yesterday were "dada." So he repeated it over and over for about 2 minutes, and I've been putting in quite a bit of work, so it wasn't by chance. Pretty much every morning, I'm like, Wesley, can you say "dada, dada, 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 dada"? So been putting in quite a bit of work, but that's been extremely special, and just to watch him grow every single day is the greatest honor I've ever had in my entire life. So that's an easy gratitude for me. How about Mike?
Thanks, Zach. Mine is just as easy. I am getting married in 10 days. So this will be my last webinar as a single tax filer. So next time you all see me, I'll be a married man. No pun intended.
I love it. And technically, since today is fundamentals, Mike would be a married filing jointly filer the entire year because it's based off his tax filing status as of 12/31/2025. So, but how about Ben? What are you grateful for today?
Thanks, Zach. I'm just grateful for the past couple weeks for friendships. I've been able to celebrate a lot of different friends, milestone birthdays, anniversaries. So I'm just grateful for all the friendships that I have in my life uh, that I got. I'm very blessed.
I love it. Thank you, Ben. How about Michael?
Not to sound like a broken record, but my gratitude this morning is also friendship. Recently, I got the opportunity to spend some time with someone who lives out of state that I grew up with, and many opportunities to spend time with many close friends. But just to see everyone turning a new page into their 30s, starting families, getting married, it's just been fun to experience. Thank you, Zach.
Love it. Thank you, Michael. How about Jenny?
Thanks, Zach. I'm just grateful that I have an opportunity to get together with every single member of my family for the first time in 2025 this coming weekend. We are all heading to Baraboo to do a huge family camping trip. And I just love seeing the excitement in our household as we're gathering all the items up and knowing we're going to see just everyone we love that we haven't seen in a long time.
Amazing. And last but certainly not least, if Ashley is here, I saw something go on with the camera, but if Ashley is here, what are you grateful for today?
Thank you, Zach. I'm having a camera issue, so my camera is on, but you can't see me. Um, I will work on fixing that, but I am grateful for grandparents once again. My kids returned home safely from a trip in Colorado on Sunday, and just hearing all their stories and their laughs and giggles, just moments that will never be forgotten by my children and their grandparents. So just grateful for them and their experience.
Love it. Thank you, Ashley. Really appreciate it. And for each of you, take a second today, take a minute today, and if you haven't already, just really reflect on what you're grateful for today. We always say it's a VUCA world. It's a military term that the world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And gratitude really is the antidote, and research backs that up. So take a second today, think about something you're grateful for, and really capture it too. Write it down, share it with somebody else. But without further ado, today is an exciting day because this is one of our favorite topics here at Gentian, and it's going through the fundamentals. And in honor of that, I have a football here. Any of you Packer fans out there might know where I'm going with this, but in 1961, the Green Bay Packers lost the NFL championship that year. They're one of the best teams in the league. The next year, the first practice, everyone thought Vince Lombardi was going to come in and go through all the advanced plays. They had some of the best players in the NFL, and instead he started the day with, "This is a football." Everyone laughed at him like, okay, we get it. We know what a football is. And they thought he was just going to set it down and go through something else. And instead, he legitimately went through all of the fundamentals with blocking, running, tackling, etc. And make a long story short, the Green Bay Packers won the NFL championship that next year. So for us, we love that analogy because no matter how long we've been investors, no matter how great of investors we are, no matter how good of a scenario we have, it's always great to look back, refocus, remind, and remember what all of these fundamentals are. And there's a lot of them. We're going to share just a snippet of them. We could do probably a 3-hour presentation on all the fundamentals, but really just going to go through some of the market fundamentals, retirement fundamentals, a few fundamentals when it comes to tax, and a little bit of kind of the why behind investing. And just starting out here to warm up, we'll go with Ashley, and we'll go with some fundamentals with budgeting.
Thank you, Zach. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. I know you guys can't see me, and my apologies for that. But I have 3 saving strategies that I think that are essential for everyone starting out. So you're welcome to share these with your kids, your grandkids, anyone starting out at a young age. So these 3 saving strategies, the first, 50-30-20 rule. So again, this comes to mind when you're thinking a budget. It helps everyone allocate whatever income that they have. So again, it does not matter at what income you have, but this can just divide it up easily and also just very wisely. So the breakdown, 50% of your needs, that would include rent, mortgage, utility, groceries, insurance, transportation, you name it. So those basic needs. And then 30% of your income would be wants. So that would include potentially dining out, maybe entertainment or tickets, hobbies and travel would fall under that category also. 20%, of course, then would go to savings or debt repayment. So building up that emergency fund, of course, planning for retirement, looking at investments, and then paying a little bit extra on any loans that you may have. And then next we go into the rule of automation. Again, this is just saving without thinking, if you think about it that way. It just builds really good and consistent habits effortlessly because let's be honest with ourselves. Once we set something, we don't always go and adjust something, or if we sign up for something, we don't always cancel something. It goes on for a long time. So this can be used automation to, again, emergency fund planning, retirement account savings. So maxing out that 401k or whatever percentage you have, just automatically go from your paycheck to a savings account of some sorts. It works because it removes the temptation to spend what you have. You know, once that check gets deposited into your checking account, it basically is free game for usage. So we're going to kind of take some of that portion of the paycheck away up front so you don't even see it and get used to spending, of course, what you only need. And 1% rule is for impulse purchases. You may quickly come across something that you don't need. So again, this 1% rule makes you pause, maybe even 3 days before buying something. You only want to spend 1% of your annual income on an impulse buy or something that you're looking at. So let's say $60,000 a year as an example. Anything that's $600 or more, you should take 3 days to think about before purchasing it. Gives you a cool off period. It also differentiates between your needs and your wants, and of course, reduces that buyer's remorse in case you made an impulse purchase. So please again share these, ask us with any questions, and I will turn it back over to Zach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate it. I love that. And the 50-30-20 rule is a great one. And sharing with your children and grandchildren, one potential idea for an advanced strategy is actually flipping that around, depending on their scenario and depending how simple their scenario is. Actually flip the savings over to 50%, have the 30% be the needs and 20% the wants. And I love the 1% and take a day to do it. I'd probably have significantly less golf stuff if I did that. So I'll probably make sure to share that with my wife, and we might save a little money on that end. As we go through and continue with the fundamentals, I kind of want to go through something just to start with the bare bones basic of why do we invest. And I'll share my screen here to go through the basics of one of those tenets, and that's really because of inflation. And I just wanted to show the impact of purchasing power over time on our dollars, that $1 after 10 years with about a 3% average inflation, that $1 10 years later is going to feel like 74 cents. 20 years later is going to feel like 55 cents. And 30 years later, that dollar is going to feel less than half of what it did 30 years prior. and showing it another way when it comes to our actual investment dollars, that if we hypothetically had a portfolio of around $1 million 10 years later, even though it'll still say $1 million on the statement, purchasing power wise, it's really only going to feel like 740. After 20 years, it's going to feel like 550. In 30 years, it's going to feel like 441. So again, that's not what the balance is going to say, but it's really why we need to continue to invest. And Ben will share kind of the difference between stocks and bonds and going through those fundamentals. But if we didn't and just parked our money into a savings account, that would be a very big deal. So it's really why we need to continue to stay investing over time, where one of the most common misconceptions in our industry is that, okay, I'm about to retire, I got to get really conservative. I got to preserve all of these dollars, where bonds, fixed income, cash generally don't exceed inflation over time, especially if we add a withdrawal rate on top of it. And so that's why we need to continue to be smart investors over time with something that both exceeds inflation, on average of 3%, and also if we're withdrawing dollars in retirement, if we're taking out 3 to 4% of our account, we really need asset classes that continue to grow more than 5, 6, 7%, so we can continue to give ourselves a raise over the future. So with that, Ben, share a little bit more about the basics of stocks and bonds and how the markets are doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Zach. I'm going to share my screen as well here and just kind of give you guys a quick 101. What's a stock? What's a bond? Here. So as this screen comes on up, so what is a stock? What is a bond? Stocks, really simple. It's owning something. It's owning parts of a business. That's what a stock does. Or conversely, or a bond on the other end is actually loaning. You are loaning money out to a company. And then on the flip side, the differences of where you're going to get the growth. On the stock side, you're going to get the growth through appreciation of the stock. Hopefully the value goes up. Or dividends is what you're going to be paid. Whereas a bond is going to be all interest, and then you'll receive back that principal that you had given out to that company that you loaned out to. Returns typically, this is just on average, is more volatile over time for stocks, whereas bonds may be a little more consistent over the long-term time, with risks being, hey, potentially higher returns on the stock side, but you might incur additional risks, whereas potentially lower risk, lower returns on bond side. So that's just a really quick one-on-one. What's the difference between a stock and a bond, which you might see over time. And with that being said, now we can kind of jump in, as Zach said, quick update with the markets here. As I stop sharing my screen. Quick updates on the markets, which track some of those stocks and bonds that we just kind of went as a one-on-one over. Dow Jones right now is up 5.59%. NASDAQ up 10.38%. S&P 500 is up 9%. The Russell 2000 is up 2%. The international stocks, they're up 21.23, and the emerging markets currently is up 18.16. So that's a really quick review though, but back to you, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it. And we've kind of looked at this and internally, and you might have noticed the reviews or conversations with you, is that we tried to stop using the word stocks in general, because stocks, the stock market, something scary. You talk to your neighbor, your friend, everyone's going to give you a different answer what it is, where all it truly is, as Ben said, owning shares of what happen to be the most liquid, the greatest, most adaptable companies in the world. And as long as they increase their earnings over time, our dollars will continue to grow with them. So as we continue along with markets and diversification basics, I'm going to send it to Mike, but many of you know that I played baseball, basketball, football, and I kind of wanted to show off my arm, and I kind of want to pass this to Mike as I pass it to him. Mike. Hey, there we go.
Wow. It's quite
All
the
the
throw,
way from
Zach.
Wisconsin to Virginia, and it looks like it turned colors with the air quality that we've had lately. So
Yeah, no, evidently when you throw a football 800 miles, it changes to black. So anyways, no, I really appreciate Appreciate the intro there. Yeah, getting back and continuing on the idea of basics, there's three quick things that I really want to cover. One is not so basic. I do want to talk about the Federal Reserve since the last conversation, which we've had. There's a little bit different of an expectation coming up in September. So I'll touch on that. Want to kind of get into a little bit of how we get exposure to stocks and bonds. As a lot of you know, our core recommendations aren't necessarily just to own the individual companies, but to rather invest in mutual funds, or better said, managers who can help us get exposure to that. And then finally, the importance of owning both, and at what points in our lives that we really want to become a little bit more diversified into fixed income, otherwise known as bonds, or equities, which is stocks. So first off, Federal Reserve. So what we've learned recently is that we've got a little bit of some weakening economic data. And that has analysts believing that, based on the last Federal Reserve comments, that there could be a rate cut coming in September. Now, the first rule of thumb with all of this is that nobody has a crystal ball. There are no future facts, as Zach loves to say, and I cannot remember where he got it from. So I'll give that credit to him, probably Chris. But anyways, so no future facts. We have no idea what the Federal Reserve is going to do. And one of the riskiest things we can do is predict interest rates because of the volatility that it creates within fixed income and within the stock market itself. So that being said, right now, the general consensus is a rate cut coming in September, but that's only an 80% consensus. And I say only because that is far from 100. And also that number changes every single day. But just want to lay it out there that we could see a rate cut, which was widely unexpected not too long ago. So it's interesting to see how fast things can change. Number two, let's talk about how we get exposure to these stocks and bonds, which we've just learned a little bit more about or studied on. I'd like to say everybody who watches this knows what it is. But if there's one thing that you can take away, one thing that you could do, teach it to your children, teach it to your grandchildren, or direct them to this video at whatever time in the future it becomes available for them to learn themselves. But how we recommend to get exposure to stocks and bonds is by using quality mutual funds. And what a mutual fund is just think about a basket. It's a basket of stocks, it's a basket of bonds. It operates underneath guidelines about what types of stocks and what types of bonds it can actually purchase. And then we entrust a manager with that mutual fund. So each mutual fund itself comes with a manager, and that's who we're interviewing. That's who we're talking to, because we want to make sure that their philosophy aligns with our own. And we want to pick quality managers because that's what's going to create the outperformance in comparison to their peers in each individual asset class. So as a quick review, there's all sorts of different types of stocks. There's all sorts of different sizes of companies. There's all sorts of companies with different goals long-term, not just the products they create, but how they continue to make money themselves, whether that's reinvesting in the growth or if it's having a product that creates a cash flow. So we want exposure to all different sizes, all different types. We entrust mutual fund managers for this. And in some circumstances, we look at some individual companies as being opportunities all by themselves. The last thing. So when do we own stocks? When do we own bonds? Well, everybody shared their screen so far, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same. It would be a shame not to take the opportunity. But anyways, going to jump into the JP Morgan Guide to the Markets. As you guys can see, there's 71 pages here, which I read every day. That's not true. I do look at all of them and take a good gander of what JP Morgan has. They have great analysts there, and we want to utilize everybody in the industry. So by taking a look at this chart itself, when we really want to own something a little bit more conservative, even cash in this scenario, is times of shorter term volatility. So if we have a purchase that's coming up in 1, or we like to say in the next 3 years, actually, a lot of times is to make sure that we have money allocated that will be there when it's time to make the purchase itself. We don't want all of our money wrapped up in stocks because of the fact that the worst 1-year return is negative 37%. And we're not going to act like we know when that's going to happen, right? So we want to make sure money's set aside. This year is a great example. Early on, all we heard was that the market was going to continue to rise this year. We were going to get deregulation with the government. We were going to get companies that could invest more in themselves. And that was going to create a booming United States economy. Well, then we got news about tariffs and all this other fun stuff that we've had to navigate. And that's created volatility. So in the short term, we've watched the market come down over 20% very temporarily because it turned on its head and came all the way back up to now we're being positive on the year. So pretty crazy how quickly that can happen. Imagine if you had a big ticket purchase that you had to make in April of this year, right? We want to make sure money is set aside because of how quickly that can happen. And this chart is a great example of it. Now, let's say that we're talking to your grandchildren, your children, even yourselves, because when you retire, we are going to be retired for a long period of time. You know, individuals, the lifespan is getting longer and longer and longer. So the idea of retiring at age 60 isn't that you're only going to live to 67 at this point. We're seeing many people live into their hundreds even. So we plan based on the life expectancy, which is now in the 90s. We want to look at a 30-year time frame of retirement. So even though you're retired, you still want to own equities, because check this out. On 20-year rolling returns since 1950, this means every 20-year period that's exist on an annual basis since 1950, right? The worst stocks have ever done is 6% per year over those 20-year periods. That is a wonderful return. And so we want to continue to have exposure for it, and especially younger individuals, right? This is why we want to take as much risk as possible when it comes to a tastefully diversified portfolio of equities with people who are saving for college. We have 18-year runway, right? When we get closer to college, we'll get a little bit more conservative, but we want to take risk in those 529 plans, because that's how we can maximize a return and hedge the biggest inflationary item, which is education. So there's a lot of items out there, a lot of things to think about. Young savers, those who are starting their 401ks, let's make sure that they take the time to understand their investments and get into all equities so that they can get the growth over the time frame of their lives. The last thing to consider is individuals, right? We want to manage risk tolerance. We want to make sure people can understand these sort of things, because it is human nature to not enjoy watching your money depreciate. That's completely normal, right? We feel it, we see it all the time. And so the last thing I'll leave you with, because I have taken way too much time of this webinar at this point in time, is that we want to make sure that we manage our behavioral finance. We learn to understand these things. That's why it's important to get back to basics, so that you know that even though you're taking equity risk and that might feel uncomfortable, it's the right decision for long-term dollars. Anyways, thanks, Zach. I'll pass it back to you.
Oh. I didn't see it. You must not have as good as arm as me, but I do appreciate you catching my throw, because I'm probably going to have my 4th shoulder surgery after how hard I threw that, and go back into retirement. So
yeah, mine landed somewhere in Ohio, so that's
I appreciate the completion. But
I played soccer. I should have kicked it to you.
I love it. But we'll switch gears here just a little bit from market fundamentals to more planning fundamentals, and we'll let Michael share some retirement fundamentals. I'll share very briefly on some tax fundamentals, and then we'll send it over to Jenny to let you know what's all happening here at Gentian coming up. So, Michael, what are some retirement fundamentals we should know about?
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, I want to touch on, excuse me, some retirement income basics, making that transition from being a saver to a spender. So the first thing that you want to do, and when you're preparing, maybe 2025 or 2026 is the year that you're going to officially retire, you want to identify your sources of income, Social Security, pensions, gather information on these benefits, because these are only going to support the income that you need from your investments as well. So we'll structure your investments around your income plan and what you need based on the conversations we have. We're also going to help create that withdrawal strategy from your investments. Maybe you have traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, taxable brokerage or personal accounts. We want to minimize taxes as much as possible and really extend the life of that portfolio and what income it can produce for you. When you get into retirement, protecting against risks is extremely important. So emergency funds still matter. Having some cash on hand is extremely important. It's going to prevent you forcing to take withdrawals, maybe when markets are down. And if the majority of your money is in pre-tax accounts like traditional IRAs or 401ks, if you need to take an extra withdrawal, that might cost you extra dollars in taxes. Speaking of taxes, the timing and where you take money from, what type of account is extremely important. You want to review some opportunities annually to look at Roth conversions. Some of these discussions we'll have with you will be very individualized, but extremely important. Outside of the finances, preparing yourself emotionally and having a mindset is also extremely important, because it's a big shift. After decades of saving, it's okay to spend that money. That's why you save it. But having a plan is key. You want to focus on being sustainable with the amount of money you're taking from your accounts, not necessarily trying to maximize what you're taking from them. Another big piece of this, which I'll be very brief on, even though we could do an entire webinar on, is the emotional side of retirement. Many people enter this phase of life without any sort of life plan. What's your purpose? What do you want to accomplish now that you have more time? There's a lot more to this. Of course, for today, I wanted to keep it pretty simple, but please talk to us. Retirement is our bread and butter, and we're here to help you and your family. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. And I know we're running a little bit long here today. Like I said at the very beginning, we're very excited about this. And when you let the young guns go on fundamentals and the opportunity to share, it's going to take a little while. But I'll go through a few tax fundamentals really briefly, very high level, and then we'll get it over to Jenny and she'll share what's coming here at Gentian. So I'm going to share my screen, and a common misconception with taxes, and hear this all the time, is just the confusion between marginal tax brackets and effective tax bracket, the tax that you actually pay. So this is directly from the IRS website, and oftentimes in the example that if somebody was filing singly and made $58,000 a year, somebody would go to their marginal tax rate number and be like, oh, all of my dollars are taxed at the 22% tax bracket. That's actually not the case, and the IRS actually has an extremely helpful diagram here to show that whether somebody made $58,000 or $1,000,000 in the year, in the first 10% bracket, they pay the exact same. In the next 12% bracket, they pay the exact same. So breaking it down a little bit further is that from the first $11,600 that a person earns is taxed at 10. Then the difference between 11,000 and 47,000 is 12. And then from 47 to 58 is 22. So that's where the marginal tax bracket comes in, and it only refers to where the next dollar earned is actually taxed at, not the entire amount. That's something that we've gone through taxes for a very long time, and that's something that gets very, very confusing. And just showing a very basic breakdown of that, I put it in a tax calculator here. And the marginal tax bracket of 58,000 filing singly is 12%, but the effective tax rate, the actual amount in taxes that you pay, is 8.58%. So extremely interesting in a tax fundamental for you. And with that, I'll pass it to Jenny for the happenings here at Gentian.
Thank you, Zach. Yes, you guys, we are at the end of August. So we are entering our very last week where we're going to have Michelle Norris back to talk about muscle medicine. She's going to take us through some mandatory muscle movements for maintaining independence, as long as just the importance of how we exercise and stay active as we age. Then we move into the month of September. So I'll just touch on a couple of our upcoming events quickly so you can kind of mark your calendars. September 8th, we have the Shred event that's happening over at the Doty Farm. So gather up all of your confidential paperwork, even your technology items. So we have a whole list of acceptable items that you can bring over and get rid of securely. September 17th, we have Where Will You Live? It's a life transition planning workshop. So we did this last year. We had great reviews, and we already have an amazing panel of speakers lined up to come. So if you are free September 17th, get your RSVPs in for that. That'll be right here at the River Club of Mequon near our offices. September 24th, we have Birthday Club. Always remember, if you can't make Birthday Club in your birthday month, you can always attend one the month ahead or the month behind. So make sure you RSVP on Calendly and then send in those pictures. We are learning about travel destinations this year. So hand us a photo of your favorite spot as well as the headshot so we can have some conversations with you about that. And then lastly, we have our Ladies and Gentian topic coming up. September 30th has been finalized. We're going to be talking about growth and experiential learning, lifelong learning, and we have a guest speaker called Wild Terrains who will be covering all female based travel groups. So that'll be super fun too. So if you haven't made it to a Ladies and Gentian event, that'll be a good one to check out. So lots of exciting stuff coming up next month. Back to you, Zach.
Thank you, Jenny. I really appreciate it. And thank you again for joining us here today. And the fundamentals is such an amazing piece. And it's not just fundamentals with investing or the fundamentals. This is a football like Vince Lombardi. Looking at all aspects of our life, what are the fundamentals that we should go back to or refocus on? Maybe they're fundamentals of what it means to be part of your family, or how we speak to each other, or the conversations that we have, or maybe it's with your health and fitness, that maybe going back to the fundamentals is exactly what you need right now when it comes to your dieting or the goals that you have. So we absolutely love fundamentals here. And one thing too that I'll leave you with, and kind of the last fundamental that we have here, is from a great mentor of ours, Nick Murray, that the three most timeless pieces when it comes to being a successful investor over time is that the markets and economies cannot be forecasted or timed. The best time to put money into the market is when you have it, and the best time to take it out is when you need it. And that helps avoid all the different mistakes of trying to guess or assume or speculate what the future is going to bring. So with that, I hope each of you have a great tail end of your summer here. Hope you guys have been safe with the floods that we had here in Wisconsin, and praying for each of you that maybe had issues with basements or things that you had to replace. And we're here for you throughout that entire process. So with that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thank you again.